Are you a practice owner and you're struggling to make ends meet? Are you a little lost in the sauce and feel like you need that extra tip, that extra mentorship, that extra knowledge to elevate your practice? Well, on today's podcast, we're going to talk about the top 3 tips to make your practice profitable. Let's
This is
go.
a Defocus Media production. What's up, everyone? It's your favorite optometrist, Dr. Darryl Glover.
And I'm Dr. Jennifer Lyerly, resident optometry nerd.
And welcome to Defocus Media, optometry's #1 podcast, where we discuss the hottest topics, latest technology, eyewear, practice management, and more. So sit back, relax, and defocus.
What's up, everyone? It's your favorite optometrist, Dr. Darryl Glover. Today, I'm very excited because we have an all-star on the show. Are you out there and you're struggling when it comes to your practice and you're trying to figure out how to elevate and take it to the next level? Well, guess what, my friends? You have no more worries because today on the podcast, we have an amazing star, Dr. Adam Bryan. How are you doing today, my friend?
Good morning, Dr. Darryl. Very well, thanks. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, man, super excited to have you on the show. And for all those that are listening, thank you so much for tuning in and hanging out with your favorite optometrist. Today is a special show because, a lot of times we need some help in our practices and we're scared to ask for the help, or we go to the wrong resources for the help. And sometimes we think the things that hurt our practice can actually help our practice. And I came across Dr. Bryan's comment on one of the forums, and he made some comments that really intrigued me. I was like, man, I love the way this guy thinks. And as we started to build more dialogue on the back end, I could tell that he was the guy that had the answers when it comes to private practice. So before we get too far, man, let's jump into who you are and how you got into this amazing profession known as optometry, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, Darryl. So,
Yeah.
my name's Dr. Adam Bryan. I've been an optometrist since 2005. My wife and I, who's also an optometrist, Dr. Christy Tart Bryan, we started a practice in Holly Springs, North Carolina, called Carolina Family Vision in 2009, and I've just grown it. We grew it for a long time. It got big and big, and we did actually sell the practice in 2022, and so now we spend more of our time helping others, taking the knowledge and the experience that we gained along the way to help others, um, try to avoid some of the same mistakes that we made in trying to make it the best practice possible.
Awesome. Super exciting to hear that. And I want to jump right into it, man, because again, there's a lot of ODs out there that's looking for that mentorship, for that guidance. And I really want to hone in on really 3 things today that I feel have been very impactful to a lot of practice owners. And the top 3 things are really, the importance of the P&L, the importance of insurance plans, right? Vision
Oh
plans,
yeah.
and also prescribing from the chair. Because from what I saw from your responses, these are things that are part of your DNA and what gave you the opportunity to build an amazing practice. So let's kind of take it from the top, man. When it comes to looking at a P&L, where should we begin, especially if we're just opening a practice, or hell, even if we have an existing practice? How should we really break that down, my friend?
Well, I really like the P&L because without any real good experience, did our books from day one. Where I just, bought the newest version of QuickBooks back in, '07, '08 when we started, making purchases for the new office build out, and I've done it ever since. And I mean, I have a CPA that does our taxes and that helps do that, but having that integral knowledge of the numbers makes a big difference. And even if you don't feel like doing that, looking at the P&L every month makes a huge difference instead of just, letting an accountant send you a bunch of numbers, and, being able to dive into it yourself. And, you got to look at all the lines. Everybody talks about top line versus bottom line versus cost of goods. I mean, you got to know all of it, because if you have too much on the top but not enough on the bottom, then there's somewhere uh, that's not going right. And so knowing, in eye care, in business, there are some good standards for what the different percentages of cost of goods and salary of staff, payroll, and rent, and those sort of things. So, really paying attention to that on a monthly, quarterly, and annual basis can let you know where you're at. And not only, and not everybody is the same, but you need to know where you are relative to where you were. You want to know, are you growing? Are you getting smaller? Did your costs go up? You've got to be able to know those numbers inside and out and be able to then take them and apply them to the practice itself and your staff, or how you are buying lenses in the optical, or how you're buying contact lenses, and are patients actually buying contact lenses, those sorts of things. So you've got to be able to know the stuff top and bottom, inside and out, and then apply it to the everyday life.
I love what I'm hearing. And the thing that I really love is that you're basically saying, don't just put it all in your CPA hands. You need to have ownership of it and understand it as well. And the other key thing that I love that you stated is that you got to know where you're coming from, and to figure out where you're going, right? I mean, if you don't have that foundational knowledge of where you're at, how are you going to be able to grow your practice? Now, I want to kind of circle back to something that you touched on. You mentioned percentages, especially when it comes to the P&L. I have seen all types of stuff online when it comes to what that should actually look like. Do you have a formula or recipe that you use that's kind of ideal for how you built your practice that you like to share with our colleagues out there?
Um, I think that what's always been floating out there, and when I started doing this, so Christy and I, Facebook was a thing, but it wasn't really a thing for professional groups and stuff.
Come
And
on,
so
man. You're aging yourself there,
yeah,
man. Come on,
we
man.
we go to private practice or practice management meetings and whatnot, and so you would listen to and hear what they had to say, and so you try to um I guess assume that those are the goals. And we used some consultants. We used the Williams Group when we were coming up. We were members of Vision Source for our entire practice career, so we had a lot of access to practice management and the numbers. Everybody classically says 30%, net profit. That's the goal. And so we have never really been interested in, just being average. And so our goal was always to um, make the practice the best that it can be. And then, you know, when you get to the bottom line, see that it's above. And if it wasn't above, then go through each and every one of those line items on the P&L and L and figure out what do we need to do to get this one in line or that one in line, so that the take home is what it needs to be. Because otherwise, as the owner, you can put in those 60, 80 hours of work every week and not have a lot to show for it if you're not, really cognizant of every expense and every piece of the pie that comes in each month.
Yeah, I love that. That 30% is kind of what I've heard as well. And I love how motivated you are and ambitious to always shoot for, beyond that. Now, when we think about that P&L, we think about all those lines. If you had to really concentrate, if we had a colleague right now that's starting a practice and they wanted to go out tomorrow and really concentrate on three main areas, what would be those three main areas that you would really hone in to, get to the promised land of having
Sure.
that profitable practice?
Well, you got to think about the ones that you have control over, because there are
Okay.
some that you don't. I mean, rent is a fixed cost. HV, utilities are a fixed cost. So those are things that, you'd like to pay less, but you got to keep the lights on, you got to keep the AC on and whatnot. So, and you got to pay your rent. So the things that you can control are payroll. So you don't want to, it's a balance. So you don't want to have too few employees, but you don't want to have too many, but you want to have the ones that are in the office, trained and efficient, so that you don't have to overstaff. And certainly in post COVID, where price, the workforce has tightened up, and so the wages are going up. So that's become, certainly more of a challenge. I think for practices is trying to keep the payroll percentage in line. Another one that is where we kind of championed, and my wife Christy was really the um, driving force behind this, was the cost of goods. And so, in the percentages that you read online or see in the magazines and presentations is 25%. That's the kind of the goal for your cost of goods. And being members of Vision Source really allowed us to take advantage of um, a lot of great pricing, from contact lenses to frames and ophthalmic lenses. And, I always hear that, well, you got to pay them the royalty and all that. And I'm like, of course, yeah, you do. But if you do it right, even when we were finishing right before we sold, we were, close to a $4 million a year practice. And we, even with our royalties that we were paying, our cost of goods were still like 21, 22%. And it's all about, putting the thought in and taking advantage of um, programs that are available to you through the different manufacturers, especially contact lens manufacturers. And you don't have to be a member of Vision Source or PECA or any of those to get good deals, but you have to, ask, and you have to inquire, and maybe you have to use one brand a little more than you use other brands, and it helps to kind of build up a loyalty, rebates and discounts and stuff. So you just got to figure out, what can I do to help my patients, but also help myself.
I love that. I love that. So what I'm hearing so far is cost of goods, also payroll, and if you had to land on one other one, what would it be?
Um, so, and then, the miscellaneous things, you can buy, office supplies till the cows come home. You can go to Walmart, you can go to Staples, you can go to Target, and if you don't have good control of that, then it will really eat you alive, death by a thousand cuts, because it's just buying, a ream of paper here and a ream of paper there, or toner, and all of those things. But if you're not paying attention, we had a really good office manager who treated the bottom line like it was her own, and
Nice.
she would buy a lot of our office supplies at BJ's and Sam's and Costco when they were on sale, even at those places. So, you can really save yourself a couple of percentage points on that. And if, you're talking about seven-figure practices, one
Adds
percentage
up.
point is like at least $10,000. So that's a fair amount of money. So you just have to really pay attention.
I love it. I love it. This is great, man. I mean, miscellaneous items, cost of goods, payroll. In regards to payroll, what would you say that percentage would be in regards to a range? Because I know that's going to vary depending on the size of the
Right.
practice, of course,
Size of
right?
the practice, location. I mean, if you're in New York City, Chicago, Miami, San Francisco, it's certainly going to be higher, most likely. But I think, the 18 to 22% is sort of the classic goal. And that doesn't include associate pay. So again, just trying not to, you can be overstaffed. I don't mind being overstaffed if everybody is, pulling their weight. If you've trained them well enough to be efficient in the job that they're doing and the service they're providing the patients and yourself. And that was another key area where my wife was, on top of things like nobody's business. She had the staff well trained and, doing work every day, not messing around on their phones, and killing the clock and all that kind of stuff. So you just gotta, again, you gotta pay attention. And that's a thing that I think a lot of solo practitioners, um, they have a hard time because they're in the exam room so much, trying to create that top line revenue, that they don't have eyes other places. They don't have enough hours in the day to keep their eyes on the staff and keep their eyes on their books and purchasing and stuff. So having, a really great office manager that you can trust if you're in that situation is certainly a huge, huge benefit. And for my wife and I, it was a huge benefit that we usually alternated days in the clinic. So one of us was doing administrative work while the other one
Ah,
was seeing patients. So we always had somebody with their eyes on the situation.
I love that. I love that. And from what I'm hearing today, my friend, is that your wife is the secret sauce behind a lot of the
100%.
success there.
100%.
I
And
love
in
it,
my
man.
household
I love
too.
it. I love it, man. I love it. Well, let's kind of switch gears. I mean, cost of goods, P&L, all of this jazz, fantastic. So that's one good piece of, what we should look at to have a profitable practice. But I think another piece is also vision plans. And, this is how I came across, learning more about you is that there was a comment in regards to how vision plans just suck. They're the worst thing out there, right? And you challenge people to think about it a little differently. So, how important is it to leverage vision plans in your practice to be profitable? And how have you made that magic happen? Because, as we all know, everyone is like, we don't need any vision plans. Go without
Right.
insurance, this, that, and the third. But I'm not gonna lie, I love insurance. It feeds patients into my practice, and we have a very profitable practice. And I want to continue
Yeah.
partnering with all the insurance companies out there. So I'm curious to know, how did you get that mindset? How did you land on that? Let's break it down, my friend.
I think it started, just very basic, like kind of the primal, survival instinct. We opened cold. It just happened to be kind of on the back end of the Great Recession, and people were tight with their money. Banks were tight with their money. It was a huge deal, in 2008 and 2009. And we're like, what are we going to do to get people in here?
Right.
We're in a community, we're in a kind of a bedroom community, where everybody here seems to have a good job, and good jobs usually come with good benefits. And so they're they're not going to come here from the beginning if they can't utilize the benefits that they're already paying for, whether it's VSP, IMED, Spectera, Davis, whatever. And so we've got to play the game, and to get, because we got to pay the rent. We got to pay our staff. We didn't take a penny out of our practice for the first 2 full years because we were paying off debt and putting it back into the practice because we were working elsewhere along the road. So that was okay, but we knew we had to generate income, and we knew that taking those plans was probably our best opportunity. And so that slowly, kind of turned over and over, and the snowball got bigger. And so then we kind of changed our mindset. And as we were growing bigger and bigger, we talked about, well, do we want to drop this plan? Do we want to drop that plan? And we still didn't, for the most part. We may have dropped one along the way somewhere, a real pain in the butt plan, but for the most part, we kept them on because we looked at each um, patient with vision care as an opportunity. That's an opportunity to fit them with contacts for the first time. It's an opportunity to sell them a couple pairs of glasses. But, in keeping with, the theme of what a lot of optometry is going to. It's an opportunity to take care of their medical side, because a lot of patients have good medical insurance and good vision plan, but they don't necessarily know that their medical plan can cover some of their eye related issues. And so
Right.
they're going to follow, whoever takes their VCP. And so you get them in, you find, dry eye, you find cataracts, you find diabetes, glaucoma, whatever. And now you have that patient because they trusted you. They came in with their vision care plan, but now you can, see them on their medical plan, which is probably going to pay you, 2, 3x what you would have been paid otherwise. And if you didn't take the vision care plan to begin with, you never would have had that opportunity.
Adaptation.
So
Yeah.
every patient that comes in is, again, it's an opportunity, whether it's opportunity for things that we did later in the practice, starting about 18 or 19, we created one of the first dry eye clinics in this area. We had the first luminous IPL in Wake County in 2019. I mean, we really got heavy into dry eye, and a lot of those patients are people who were there with their vision care plan, and in the lane, we identified them as dry eye patients, and so we brought them back for a medically based dry eye evaluation. and then talk to them about services that aren't covered by their either insurance. And so if you open the window of opportunity for people to see you and to take part in your services, you do yourself a very big service. But I think if you close that window and say the only people that can be seen here are people that are willing to pay out of their pocket,
Yeah.
regardless of if they're covered or not, then you're really limiting the opportunity on the back end.
Yeah, I'm over here. I just want to clap. Right, right. Fantastic job. I mean, the key word is opportunity, right? And what I'm hearing is that these vision plans are really marketing plans to get patients into your practice. And once they're into your practice, we know that they're coming in for glasses and contacts, but we also find things going on medically that we need to address. And they're not going to go to their primary care physician to address dry eyes. You're there. So why not just bring them back for that medical office visit and truly help them find the right solutions to make sure that their eyes feel better, but also help them see at the same time. I mean, this is the way we have to think, colleagues. We cannot think archaically of how practice used to be many, many decades ago. The game is changing. Patients are changing. Their lifestyles are changing. What are you doing to keep up with these patients that walk through your doors? Because they want to be seen, and that's why they're choosing you. I love all this information in regards to insurance. When it comes to looking at frames and insurance companies, are there certain things that you look at from certain plans that are more profitable with certain frame lines, or do you just really prescribe the best solutions and let your optical team members figure out what frames should be in the practice? Or how does that conversation take place whenever you're looking at what actually you're using from these different plans out there?
Sure. And so from a frame perspective, we were always, looking for, great frames, great names, but also, also being conscious of the bottom line. And so we would always look at having some economy frames. Maybe we priced them early on at like $99 or $149. And yeah, that's not much, but these are, when you look at the backside of it, these are frames that we only paid $5 for, six
Oh, wow.
dollars for, that sort of thing. And so um, while they don't look sexy on the front end, that big dollar sale, when you get to the bottom of the what did you actually keep, you actually kept a pretty huge percentage of that sort of thing.
Right.
So and then with Vision Source, we were always utilizing the frame brands that were great, because they had deals with basically all the frame companies, so we would figure out which of those that we wanted to work with most. And over time, Christy developed a board management program where we started keeping the frames on the board and would only order brand new ones so that we were never missing the best sellers. And she kind of pioneered that about 6, 7 years ago, and it's kind of become a thing now. But she was I think, one of the first people that started doing that, and that made a huge difference. And it just changed our mindset. We gave each frame manufacturer, here's 20 spaces, here's 40 spaces, and make sure that you're changing them out, putting your best sellers on there, and we will keep feeding you. We'll keep buying and buying and buying behind the scenes. So and then that's a plus one for them because we bought the one that's on the board too. And so, we're always trying to think about, the combination of providing the best products to our patients, but also what's going to provide the, best for us. And whether it's the best pricing, a good discount, whether it's a good multiple of the wholesale for like a VSP or an IMED who's really tracking the wholesale value, or are we going to get free shipping? Because free shipping is a huge deal on individual frames from the lab. Because if you
Right.
don't get that, that can eat you alive if you're not really paying attention to the invoices that come in, and if you've got opticians that are kind of willy-nilly sending things back and not really being cognizant of the costs of, if you're paying 10, $12 to ship a frame here and there, that stuff can really add
Adds
up
up. Yeah.
very quickly. So, we're really paying attention to the brands, having enough available for every type of patient, every type of shopper that we would have, from from economy all the way to having some pretty nice frames. So everybody had something to choose from.
You mentioned something. You stated that we will give them 20 slots to place frames on. I hear a lot of times with frame companies, they tell you you need to buy X amount. How did that conversation take place? How were you able to really lean in and say, this is what we're going to do, and be able to partner on the back end with these companies?
So you have to, I mean, you have to be able to show them that you're going to move their product, right? And, you can't, I probably couldn't have done that in 2009. But, in 2017, when we were, a $2 million practice and we were buying a lot of frames, it made more sense because all the reps wanted to have a slot in our optical. And we're like, well, you can, but these are the rules that you have to play by.
I
And
like
if you don't want to give us free shipping, if you don't want to take back in exchange the dogs that aren't selling 3 or 4 times over every 6 or 12 months, those sorts of relatively simple things that a good rep can handle without any problem, then you just move on, because there's not any single frame brand that will break you if you're not able to showcase it in your optical. But we also did eventually start narrowing our you know manufacturer, and that helped too. And I know a lot of people don't like Luxottica, and that's fine. And I understand all of that. And they also, own part of Vision Source, which I understand part of that. But we started utilizing a lot of their stuff, because again, it helped us with the board management. It helped us with massive end of quarter, end of year rebates and discounts, because we're taking advantage, of their umbrella of brands. And so, um, you spread yourself too thin, you're never going to sell enough in any one brand to take advantage of the discount programs that they have built in.
Yeah. I mean, I'm loving what I'm hearing. And I love that, you took it from the beginning, right? When you weren't a $2 million practice, you weren't able really to beat your chest and say, this is what I want. But as you slowly started to grow, then you kind of step back and you were like, hey, you know what? We have something here. I can now dictate my terms. Let's have a conversation and change things. And as a result of that, that elevated your practice. I know at times, especially in today's society, I'm a seasoned millennial, but there's the younger millennial crowd.
Sure.
I love you guys. I'm not taking shots at y'all, I promise. But sometimes we have that instant gratification. I want this right now. But it takes time to build something. It takes time to build relationships. And I think if you can take anything from this segment here, Adam is just saying that you really need to slowly build up and then be able to talk that talk to get what you want, essentially.
Sure. Yeah, because I mean, those are relationships. We had the
Yeah,
same lab rep. He took a different position eventually, but we had the same lab rep for the first, like, 6 or 8 years. And then
yeah,
the next one we had for basically would still be there. If we still own the practice, she would still be our lab rep. And we had the same Ray-Ban rep for the entirety of our practice. And so you build up these relationships, and they understand, um, that it's business, and that you take care of them, they take care of you. I mean, we had the same Cooper rep for the first 8-10 years. And
was that
um
Jane Childs?
yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
my girl, man.
so listen, so you'll like this, because about 8 years ago,
Yeah.
probably, Cooper tried to change her territory,
Oh,
to where she was no longer going to service the triangle.
oh.
And we were a very big Cooper practice. I mean, we were like 80% Cooper, so we were spending tons and tons of money. I wrote a letter to her boss's boss asking for her to remain our rep and keep her territory. And he answered me, and he changed his mind and kept her as the triangle rep because of that letter that I wrote him.
Yeah.
And
Hey, she was the truth, man. I mean, for
yeah,
those that may not have picked up on this, Adam and I are literally down the street from each other. And I didn't realize that until the other day, right? He's in, where you Highly Springs,
Yeah.
Apex, and
Yeah.
I'm in Raleigh, Durham, right? So not too far from each other. And this rep we're talking about, she was actually a rep when I was a technician, and then up until I became an optometrist. And when I tell you she was fantastic, she was phenomenal. She understood the game. She knew how to really lean into relationships. It was just unmatched. I mean, it's to the point where, believe it or not, Adam, I actually invited her to my wedding.
Oh,
That's how
wow. That's
close we
awesome.
were. I mean, she made me feel so good when she walked in the office, right? But I think the one thing we could take from this part of insurance is you have to really build relationships, right? You have to understand who's in front of you, how you can collaborate, how you can work together. And as time goes by, the world's at your fingertips, right? I think it's important for us to, bust down the P&L, important for us to have the right insurance companies and leverage them in the right way. But I think it's also important to be able to prescribe from the chair the right solutions for patients, right? Because if you're not doing any of that, your P&L is not going to look great, and it doesn't matter what insurance
For
company
sure.
you leverage or if you don't leverage as well. So going into this last part of this conversation, let's talk about prescribing from the chair. Maybe kind of walk me through your journey of when you first got out and opened your practice and what that looked like and how you kind of evolved into getting to the point where you could sell a practice because you did a fantastic job with understanding that patient's needs that's sitting in front of you.
Sure. And, and that's, when it's your office, you certainly, the level of concern for each patient, even though you're, a sworn, protector of medical integrity and stuff, when it's in your practice, you really feel an extra burden to really take care of them. A, because you want to on the front end, but B, because you find out that the problems, if you don't take care of them properly, come back to bite you, and you're ultimately, the buck stops there with issues that you have. And so you want to talk to patients about, what opportunities, again, opportunities there are available to, and I say this all the time, we're going to try to make your life easier, because life is hard right now, for
Yeah,
this reason or that reason. And not being able to see, and I'm 46 years old, a recent presbyope. I've got, some like minus 0.25, plus 150s that I have here that I wear a lot now, and it stinks. And these glasses make my life a lot easier with
right.
computers and whatnot. Luckily, I don't have to read too much on this screen. Otherwise, I'd probably have to have them on. But again, they make my life easier, so I'm going to do whatever I can to make their lives easier. And so I've got to understand what when are you having troubles? What activities? Is it driving at night? Well, maybe we need some single vision, distance vision only. Is it on the computer? Maybe we need some computer progressives or some computer single vision. Is it all of those different things? And so we've got to, or do you want to just put them on and forget about it? So we get you in a nice progressive lens that,
Right.
and some sunglasses and whatnot. And so you have to talk to them, and you have to understand their needs, and then you just kind of, process it. We don't have like, a million different options. We've got like 6 or 7 different options that we have to process. So it's not like, like a surgeon or something real high level. We just gotta take you know find out their needs, do their obviously do their exam, do their refraction, figure out what their demands are, and then offer them solutions to their problems. I always want solutions, whether it's, somebody calls me and says, well, your pipe is leaking. Well, that's fine, but what do we need to do to fix it? This, that, and the other. Just help me with solutions, and I will help my patients with solutions. And so offering, you know, 2 or 3 different options for, so they don't feel like they're painted into a corner where they have to get, a high end this or a high end that, where they can, do some different things, but giving them a lot of information so that when I take them into the optical and I present them to the optician, they're already on board.
Right.
They're not waiting for the optician to give them, um, the answer. They already know what they're looking for, and the optician is just going to help guide them through that process and make it more enjoyable. Um, and the craziest thing that I had LASIK back in 2025 when I first started working for a surgeon right out of school, and was minus 4.5 with some sill. So I had worn glasses and contacts most of my life, and so I hadn't picked up a pair of prescription glasses for like 20 years. And so I got these, and since I've been back, I come back into the office to help out a little bit here and there, maybe once every week or two. Um, and I've put my glasses on about a dozen like Plano presbyopes. Just at the end of the visit, I'm like, here, just put these on and look at your phone, and their eyes like light up. They're like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I cannot believe it. I think I'm like 11 of 12 or 12 of 12 of selling, progressives to people who are like less than minus 50 plus 125 and up. And, without that, as an example, I think it's a hard thing for somebody to comprehend, and that they would want to go from having never worn a pair of glasses to buying, a multifocal. Like that's like a death sentence to somebody who's 45. All of a sudden they have to wear glasses all the time, and you know who've never touched it. But having that as, just my glasses, it's been kind of crazy and fun to put them on and see their faces light up, and then see on the back end that they move forward because they saw the solution to their problem.
Hey man, this is all great information, and I love what I'm hearing is a partnership, right? It's one thing to prescribe from the chair, but you also got to be able to partner with your eyewear consultant or optician to let them know what you found and for them to continue to care. And as a result of that, your opticians or your eyewear consultants, they're going to love you, right?
For sure.
So it's very important to make sure that number one, you practice what you preach. I'm a firm believer of what you just stated. I wear right now, you see me with Ray-Ban Meta eyewear on,
Nice.
right?
Yeah.
And I wear these in my practice because we have it in our location. And I want my patients to know that I'm not selling you something just to sell you something. I'm educating you about something that I believe in, that I truly believe that's going to elevate everything that you do from when you wake up till you go to bed. And when patients see that in you, that trust factor is just unmatched. So if you can show your patients what something will feel like or experience it in some kind of way, it's game changing. And it really makes that patient journey tremendously smoother as well. Now, I want to kind of take a step back from, going from prescribing the chair to the eyewear consultant or optician, and take a step back to the technician. Because I feel like when it comes to prescribing from the chair, your technician is a very big piece of that secret sauce that makes it even more powerful. What has your relationship been with your technician over all these years of success to help elevate what you have done in that exam lane?
Sure. I think the times that we've been most successful in our whole practice career were when we had, technicians, um, eyewear consultants, opticians, even front desk people who are experienced and have, been doing it with you, especially for a while, and you'll learn each other. And so they're kind of just like gathering little pieces of information along the way. They're kind of like, like somebody who's out, trying to pick up, I don't know, apples off the ground that have already fallen. They're just grabbing one here and they're grabbing one there, and they're getting a piece of information about Mrs. Jones and, when she's having trouble. And they're not like, grilling her so that she feels uncomfortable. They're just kind of listening and asking like leading questions. And so they're able, when they get me, when they're presenting the patient to me, they can, be very concise and put all of that together, and so that I'm not starting from scratch,
Yeah.
and having to, dig up all that information, because sometimes, it's easier for that information for the patient, especially a new patient, to come out in like general conversation than it is if you're like interrogating them. And so because the technician gets to work with them from the moment they grab them in the waiting room until through the pre-test, through, chair skills or whatever they're doing, and putting the phoropter together in the room, that's a good, 10, 12 minutes. So they've got a nice running dialogue with them, hopefully, and they feel comfortable talking to them, and just kind of, you know, sitting back and, letting them tell you their story so that they can pass that on to you. And when
Yeah,
you have a great technician who can do that, they're absolutely, worth their weight in gold.
I love it. And what I'm hearing is essentially your technician really you breaks down the barrier for you, right? They make it a smoother transition for when you walk into that exam room because now you have every piece of their lifestyle, right?
Exactly.
Have all their complaints, and you're going to be that hero to be able to prescribe the right solution to then take it out to the eyewear area to queue up or tee up your optician or eyewear consultant for that successful patient journey and transformative experience for those patients that come in as
Yeah.
well. I
I
love
mean,
it.
it's total team effort. It starts, and we learned this from the Williams group, it starts when the patient calls to get their appointment. If your receptionist is trained properly, they're asking them questions, they're recommending that they bring in all of their current eyewear. They're asking them to bring in their prescription sunglasses. Most people don't have them, but if you start planting that seed. Well, why
Hey,
don't I have prescription
yeah,
sunglasses? That
yeah,
sort of thing. It's a total team effort, and with the right training, it can really flow. And the
yeah.
doctors don't feel like they're, stuck in the exam room for an extra, 5 or 6 minutes just trying to pry out this, you know, super important information.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, one last question for you in regards to these three things. Um, if you had to narrow down, one key takeaway from PNL, insurance plans, prescribing from the chair, so that our doctors out there could go out tomorrow and implement it, what would be that best practice to kind of, summarize everything here?
So, I mean, you've got to be the absolute 100% expert on the numbers and how the numbers work, from how you acquire the numbers, the physical, acquiring of the revenue through vision care plans, through medical plans, through private pay. You've got to, know that stuff forwards and back, and what leads from a vision care plan to a medical exam to a uncovered, IPL or an uncovered myopia management. And then you've got to know, your bottom line and your P&L forwards and backwards from the top line, gross revenue, to the cost of goods and to all your expenses, and then the net and the percentages. And so, and then you've got to know from, prescribing from the chair and in the optical, um, which products, are best for the patient, but are also best for the
Right.
practice. Because,
Yeah.
I want to give her, he or her, the best product, but if I don't have a good deal on that product, or if I'm paying way too much and I can't sell it for enough to cover my expenses, then we're not going to be here for very long. And I'm
Right.
not going to be able to have, you know, three opticians instead of two or one because I can't afford them. So you've got to just from top to bottom, inside and out, you've got to know the numbers, where they're coming from and where they're going.
Yeah, I love it, man. So just realize out there, my friends, my colleagues, that every patient is an opportunity, but you got to know the numbers in order to have a healthy practice to be there for the patients when they come in next year. This has been fantastic, Adam. I like to always end the segment with really asking my colleagues when it's your turn or your time to retire your phoropter, what do you want to be known for? What legacy do you want to leave behind in this amazing profession of eye care?
That's a good question. I would like, I guess there's two things. One, in my community, because we opened here in Holly Springs. We live here. Our kids my son started in kindergarten here in Holly Springs in when we first moved here in 2009, and is now graduating from Holly Springs High School
Wow.
in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And so we know, and
Congratulations.
my daughter's thank you, is a sophomore and has done the same exact thing. And so we live with these people. We, grocery shop, we go to sports games. And so I want in my community, I want to be, known as someone who took care of us and also gave back. And really just put it in, really helped the community. We've, done a lot of scholarships. We've done a lot of, sponsorships and, different things trying to just make sure that we gave back to our community just as, well as they, gave to us in the exam room. And then kind of in the optometry community, um, I'd like to be known as somebody who used his experience to help others, again, as I mentioned early on, try to get to where I got and beyond without having to, you know, get all the bruised, scraped knees and black eyes along the way. There's a lot of bumps and bruises that
Yeah.
one gets when they're kind of doing it on their own or, with their partner, that you don't necessarily have to get. They are good learning experiences for sure. But if I can help, somebody in the, Facebook community or through your podcast or different forums, try to help them, avoid some of those problems and kind of get known for that sort of thing. I would love that.
Hey, man, you have done that on today's show. I'm telling you, there's a practice owner out there right now that's just trying to figure it out, or someone that's coming out of school and they're like, you know what, I'm going to start a cold start, right? And just the knowledge that you've given on this podcast, on this show today, is just priceless. And it's going to help them to be able to live through your experiences and be able to elevate and take it to the next level. I'm a firm believer like you. I tell all my mentees, learn through my experiences so you don't have to bump your head, right?
Yes,
That
sir.
is the cheat code to life. You can, fast forward to where you need to go if you can just learn through people's experiences. And the younger you are and the earlier you figure that out, the better life will be for you, no doubt about that. Now, Adam, you're full of knowledge, a wealth of knowledge. For my colleagues out there that may want to partner with you or consult with you, what's the best way for them to reach out if they want you to help them take their practice to the
Uh,
next level?
well, that's a great question. I mean, I've had dozens of people that have asked me questions or, things through my Facebook profile. That's obviously where you and I got together. So direct message through Facebook is certainly welcome. Um, I don't really have an Instagram or TikTok. So probably that's number one. I'll also, my email address is pretty straightforward. I don't know if you have the ability to like print that and post it
Yeah,
as a
put it in the
graphic.
companion post
Yeah,
and all that stuff
that
as well.
Gmail is I'm more than happy to put that out there. So anybody can reach me basically anytime through either of those
Awesome.
mediums.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, man. This has been fantastic. For all my colleagues out there, step your game up, listen to this podcast, go back and listen to it again and take notes. Adam has really broken it down from the P&L to the insurance plans to prescribing from the chair, from learning through others' experiences. And remember, he is a resource here for you to elevate your practice. Thanks again so much, Adam. This has been fantastic. For all my colleagues out there, stay healthy, stay positive, and stay blessed. And until next time, peace.
Thanks,
Hey,
Darryl.
family, if you enjoyed this full podcast, don't miss out on more engaging content. Check out the next episode right here. And for the latest updates, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Your support means the world to us. Catch us in the next episode. Peace.